All right, we're going to the this or that teammate edition. So what we like to do is jump on here and talk about, hey, this or that, who we like in this. And I usually give Jay all kinds of tough ones. I usually say, hey, do you want to do like a NFL to, Devy? Do you want, AJ Brown or Zachariah Branch or however that is? But today we're sticking in college and we're talking this or that teammate edition. And just to see who we'd rather have. I think it's, now that we have a sample size, 5 weeks into it, let's talk about it. And, first up, Zachariah Branch versus Jacoby Lane. And I cannot believe we are having this conversation about these two guys because Zachariah Branch is one of my favorite players. I think when you're looking at him coming out of Bishop Gorman out there in Nevada, he looked fantastic. 5-star kid. He should have been a shoo-in for this offense, with Lincoln Riley, everything that we have. But from a production standpoint, and when you're looking at just like the numbers this year, and they're both in the 26 class, Zachariah Branch has 28 targets, 18 catches, 217 yards, 67.8 receiving grade there. Jacoby Lane, on the other hand, not as many targets, although he had a career high targets. I think it was 12 against Wisconsin this last week. 19 catches, 221 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and a 70.5 receiving grade. So is there a competition here, Jay? Are we crazy here? You still believe in the tower with Zachariah Branch? Or is Jacoby Lane kind of proven himself in this offense as the go-to guy?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely there's competition here. But what I'd say is like there's no clear-cut answer, I think, on this one, because if the way I look at it is I like to look at sort of the data in terms of market share and how much value they add to the teams. And I like to look at that on an age-adjusted basis. So what'd you do in your freshman year versus what other players have done in the past that have gone on to do really great things. And as far as reception yards per team pass attempt, both of these guys are not meeting those thresholds for both year 1 and 2. And then Jacoby Lane, in terms of EPA per play, is beating it in year 2, but both of them missed it in year 1, and Zachariah Branch missing it in year 2 so far. Year 2, we're still in the middle of that. We're only 4 or 5 games in here, so there's a long way to go throughout this season. But really, neither of them are really meeting those really great thresholds that I'm looking for in terms of Devy assets and really early breakouts. Now, if you're just comparing the two, one versus the other, clearly Jacoby Lane is this last pass, especially this last game, it's showing a little bit more from a wide receiver perspective. But what I wouldn't discount is Zachariah Branch's impact to the team as a whole, and then what that means for being a Devy player and fantasy player in the future. That's the piece that I think sort of gets lost in what it is. But what I'd say for right now is long way to go. Zachariah Branch has that maybe like it factor, and you've seen it a couple times, and he's evolved in a lot of different parts of the game and what he can do. So I probably still am sticking with Zachariah Branch, even though the last few weeks, or at least this last week, there's a question mark about which one you would pick. Neither showing tremendous Devy potential so far from the numbers, reception yards per team pass attempt or EPA per play, except for Lane in year 2 with that EPA per play.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still lean Branch because, well, one, I'm an idiot. Everybody knows that. I stick onto these guys. Like, you see his capital. I mean, you saw his recruiting pedigree. Like, hey, you love that. Like, 5-star kid here. He is also a playmaker in the return game and kick return, punt return. He's done that. He's shown that. Lane has looked good. I think Lane definitely, the red zone targets, he makes great catches, great hands. I think if you're going to argue who has better hands, it's definitely Jacoby Lane. I think the big thing for me is like, can he create separation? A lot of 50-50 balls, even against Wisconsin, some of these weaker defenses. He's definitely had the issues there. Branch is that playmaking, but he's not getting the targets, right? Like when you're looking at him, and I know this because I may have bet him as the over 54.5. He had 44 yards in the first half. After that, I think he got targeted one time in the second half. They didn't go to him, and they were down. And this is where I was like, oh, I hit the easy over here because they were down, and I was like, oh, they're coming into this down out of half. They're going to get in the football. They just didn't. They didn't get him in the football, and Miller Moss has essentially been thrown to Jacoby Lane. Now, is that a system problem or a player problem? I think that's the big thing you have to think of. I tend to lean with the talent because I love Zachariah Branch, and I think that he can be talented. But we might be talking about Zachariah Branch not on USC. Body language doesn't look great. not getting schemed, those type of things. And when receivers go to that system, they tend to die because they spread the ball around so much. Maybe he's going to want to go somewhere where he can be the guy. I think it's interesting. I still lean Branch, as Jay has pointed out as well. I think just the talent there and what we expect there. All right, let's go over to some freshman wide receivers here. Clemson's got some guys. We've talked about this. They just won't use the portal, but they got dudes out there they're recruiting. TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco. Two guys out here that have looked very, very good this year. Bryant has looked better, right? When we think of the stats here, just the raw numbers here. TJ Moore, 11 targets, 6 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown. So he's had some production. We like that. We like production freshman year. We like to see that. And then on the other side, though, Wesco, 12 targets, 7 catches, 238 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So more of that big play guy. We've seen that from that side there. I know Jay's going to tell us it's too early to tell. I know that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for the hot takes, throwing down who we'd rather have. Before Jay gets into his side, I liked both. I said Wesco is probably a value heading into there when I did a lot of mock drafts on their Patreon. When we're talking about him in our Discord, hey, who would you like as a late flyer? Get Wesco. I think he's talented. I just there's something about TJ Moore's talent, and he's not technically getting that much more outproduced right now in the season. And I know he got the start, didn't look great in this last week, but I still think Moore, when you just look at what he's able to do, remember, he was not an early enrollee either. So he's been learning this offense. He just got there this summer. Like, Moore is one of those guys. He's just different. He's built different. He has a different kind of frame around him. I like both, but I still lean Moore here. What about you?
Coming into the season, I had both these guys in a similar tier, which I think I'm not sure exactly how they put it, but I think most people had more significantly above Brian Wesco.
Yeah.
And I think I was more of these guys are in a similar tier. They're both 6'2". TJ Moore might be 6'2.5". I think he is listed at. TJ Moore weighs a little bit more than Wesco, but Wesco put on some weight. So I think he was 170 coming into Clemson, and I think he's now 180 something or so. And right now, from a numbers perspective, reception yards per team pass attempt, obviously Wesco with the 238, he has a higher reception yards per team pass attempt than Moore. In fact, as far as the year goes, his is above an age-adjusted level for year one. Moore is well below so far, but there's a long way of the season to go. And then on an EPA per play, Moore is actually higher than Wesco. So basically, he's adding more value when he's playing. So it's a one. It kind of split down the middle for me right now. So it's, to me, like you said, a little too early to tell. Right now, the numbers are telling me Wesco, but I honestly think this could go either way. What I would say is the 2027 wide receiver class is just freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
All of these guys, there's so many of these guys. This is so good. These two, I think, are going to be right up there in the mix of some of that really good class. But if I had to pick, I'd go Wesco right now.
Oh, look at you. I like it. I like when we disagree. We'll see how this kind of pans out there. I think the one other note about Clemson, Cade Klubnik looks a little better. He didn't look great against Georgia. But again, if you're not Alabama, you don't look good there against Georgia. But, Cade's playing a little bit better there. So when you're thinking of like, hey, this or that, I lean more based on talent. But if you got Wesco this offseason, you got a hell of a discount because he's probably going first round next year. I could see him going in the first round or at least early second, depending on kind of how your drafts play out there. All right, next one. This is near dear to my heart, so don't break my heart here, Jay. LSU wide receivers. Kyron Lacy, who's had a pretty good year, right? When you're looking at just the numbers there, 43 targets, 25 receptions, 352 yards, and 5 touchdowns, 73.2 PFF receiving grade, is the older one of this group. And then we have Aaron Anderson, former Alabama wide receiver who transferred to LSU. I thought Aaron Anderson was going to have a better year last year. Did not. I think part of the reason was what was ahead of him, as we saw from Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and everything there. This year, though, has had some production that we like. 33 targets, 27 catches, 371 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 79.2 receiving grade. I love Aaron Anderson. I think he's a versatile weapon, but I like those small slot guys that can get in and out of their breaks and create separation and be a threat in the special teams and those type of things. I'm going to lean Aaron Anderson. Yes, the youth plays a role in this when you're thinking of Devy and everything there, versatility, but I also just Aaron's Aaron's just a different athlete, I think, than Kyron Lacy. I like Kyron Lacy, but I lean the age, and I'll go Aaron Anderson here.
Yeah, Kyron Lacy has been gardening a little bit of attention in Devy drafts. I've seen him go in the first round in a couple 2025 mocks. So there's a lot of interest behind at least how his season started out pretty good. And Aaron Anderson, obviously, the stats are showing you right there that he's converting. 371 receiving yards is really good.
Yeah.
So he's doing just as well as Kyron Lacy. Obviously, not as high on the touchdowns. What I'd say is both of these prospects are sort of iffy on the way that I look at it. Kyron Lacy going into his 5th year, you'd expect probably much more. And my hope, the way I work, is I hope for early breakouts, and we didn't quite seen that. Reception yards per team pass attempt, Kyron Lacy did have okay year 1, but nothing phenomenal. And then now we're working on the year 5 here. So in my process, he kind of gets dinged a little bit. So I'm going to probably go Anderson just because he's younger. But both of these prospects are very iffy on my board and the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think Lacy could. I think you're expecting draft capital from him day 2. You think that a team could kind of come up and get it. Aaron is more of he's the mystery box. Like I think I think it's true. I think that he has a higher ceiling, but a little bit of a mystery box because, hey, didn't see it last year with Jaden Daniels. You worry about that LSU offense, but I like Aaron Anderson here. I think I'm staying there. I stick to my guns in terms of these small slot wide receivers. We are going down together. All right, last one here as we kind of wrap this up in terms of this or that from a teammate edition. I thought this was fun. Ryan Wingo, another 2027 wide receiver that's doing very well, versus Isaiah Bond, a 2025 wide receiver who we both like. If you watched our mock, you've talked about it. We like both of these guys, but we've talked about Isaiah Bond possibly being that first round, maybe back in first round or second round guy next year. And when you look at the numbers, it's kind of fun. Like Wingo, 11 catches on 13 targets, hyper efficient there. 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, 82.0 receiving grade. And then Isaiah Bond, 20 receptions on 26 target. Again, pretty efficient. 364 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 78.4 PFF grade here. I'm really testing your age bias here, whether you go young or not. But where are you leaning here with these two guys?
Another really tough one. I think this goes to the certainty of maybe having somebody that's closer to when you'd use them and having maybe like a built-in draft capital kind of floor type of thing with what he's been able to do this season. So that I'm clearly talking about Isaiah Bond there. And then the other aspect of it is Isaiah Bond has had 2 pretty solid years of reception yards per team pass attempt, so share of the team offense. And, this year he's having a pretty great EPA per play year in year 3, not so much for year 1 or 2. Wingo, on the other hand, we're not very far into the season, but so far he's spiking in his first year, and it's really, really interesting when you have those players that are spikes in year 1. Those tend to be guys that go on and do really, really well. And so it's not a 100% hit rate or anything like that. But right now through 4 games, he's spiking on reception yards per team pass attempt, and he's spiking on EPA per play, very, very high numbers. So I'm really excited about Wingo, and I'm really, really excited about the 2077 wide receiver class. I mean, we talked about a few here, but we haven't really hit on all of them, and we are doing that in our pod every week. But this is a really, really good 2027 class. What I'd say is if Wingo's spike that we've seen so far holds up through this year, it's going to be really hard to pass up on the potential of what that could mean going forward. And right now you have to weigh that against what this kind of the floor or the surety that you get from Isaiah Bond. So I'm going to go with Wingo right now and just sort of take a risk here just because of what I'm seeing in this spike, even though really what I want to see is that full year of data of him doing this. And then it may give me a little bit more confidence in making that bet. But we've seen spikes out of Texas wide receivers, and it goes on to be something good. And But that doesn't mean that Isaiah Bond is anything to slouch at. I really like Isaiah Bond as a prospect. I think he's one of the better wide receiver prospects this year.
Yeah, I mean, this really comes down to, do you want that production now? If it's close and you're like, hey, I have a team that's pretty good, I think Bond is the choice. Like if you're sitting there and saying, hey, next year I get him, he's still gonna have the production bump because I don't think he's gonna be a really good player this year. And then you're like, hey, he's gonna probably do pretty well in the draft process. I'm okay with taking Bond. I think that, but from a value perspective, Wingo's probably gonna have more value. I think that Wingo is one of those guys coming in there. He'll compete for our first round, Devy selection next year, and then you kind of playing with house money there because I think what you could trade Wingo for on the NFL side will be more than what you can trade Bond for on the NFL side, if that makes sense. I think that is kind of how I look at both of these guys. I lean Wingo though, just from a value perspective, because I'm all about value. I like playing with value. I like kind of going that way. But Bond is safe too. Like Bond's more of your safe play, depending on how your team makeup is. So that is the this or that. We like doing this. It's fun. I like scrambling Jay's brain. That's really kind of where it comes from there. I'm just talking about these guys. But these teammates are going to be battling all year, and we're going to keep you updated as the season goes.